ช่างน่าประหลาดใจผู้ชายคนหนึ่งที่เป็นโรคข้อเข่าเสื่อมที่ต้องนั่งรถเข็นมา2 ปีสามารถปั่นจักรยานรอบหมู่บ้านได้ร่างกายยืดหยุ่นอาการปวดกระดูกสันหลังหายไปหมดแล้วแขนขาไม่ชาหรือขั้นอีกต่อไปเขาไม่ส่งเสียงกระรุ้งกริ้งแล้วข้อต่อเริ่มนุ่มและยืดหยุ่นมากขึ้นราวกับว่าเขาไม่เคยเป็นโรคกระดูกและข้อมาก่อนเขาปวดเมื่อยทั้งตัวทุกวันในหลายปีที่ผ่านมาปวดเมื่อยทั้งข้อเข่าและเท้าแขนขามีอาการชาตลอดเวลาข้อเข่าบวมต้องทานยารักษากระดูกเสื่อมหลายชนิดทำให้เขาต้องไปหาหมอที่มีชื่อเสียงทั่วประเทศไทยหลายครั้งแล้วแต่ไม่ดีขึ้นบังเอิญเขาได้เพื่อนแนะนำเม็ดฟูเขาซื้อ5 หลอดมาใช้ทันทีวันละ2 เม็ดดีมากเลยเพราะว่าภายใน7 วันเขาก็รู้สึกว่าอาการปวดเมื่อยลดลงรู้สึกสบายมากขึ้น
เราเข้าใจคุณดีนะครับว่าอาการปวดข้อเข่าเสื่อมเนี่ยมันทรมานแค่ไหนจะขยับตัวจะเดินแต่ละครั้งเนี่ยมันก็ไม่สะดวกเสียงกระดูกนี่ดังกรับปวดบั้นท้ายปวดข้อปวดเข่าคุณภาพชีวิตก็แย่ลงครับผมกล้าท้าให้คุณเอาไปลองได้เลยแค่7 วันก็กลับมาเดินได้ถ้าคุณอยากหายผมจะมาบอกว่าต้องทำอย่างไรสามารถมั่นใจได้เลยนะครับว่าผลิตภัณฑ์นี้ดีจริงๆเพราะว่าลูกค้าหมื่นรายเนี่ยกลับมาซื้อซ้ำการที่ทานเป็นประจำทุกวันเนี่ยทำให้ชีวิตของเขาดีขึ้นจริงๆเขาอยากจะไปไหนเขาก็ได้ไปเขาอยากจะทำกิจกรรมอะไรเขาก็ได้ทำไม่กลับมาเป็นภาระของลูกหลานต่อ
โรคข้ออักเสบโรคข้อเข่าเสื่อมทำให้เกิดอาการตรึงและปวดในหัวเข่าไหล่หลังกระดูกสันหลังแขนขาหากไม่รักษาโรคก็ค่อยๆแย่ลงทำให้เป็นอัมพาตและพิการเม็ดฟูโบคาเมจากสหพันธ์สาธารณรัฐเยอรมนีพร้อมสารออกฤทธิ์แฮปโปไซส์เพื่อช่วยบรรเทาอาการปวดสร้างใหม่และบำรุงกระดูกอ่อนข้อโดยปกป้องเยื่อหุ้มไขข้อเพิ่มความแข็งแรงและความยืดหยุ่นของข้อต่อชะลอความเสื่อมและปกป้องข้อต่อช่วยให้คุณเคลื่อนไหวได้อย่างคล่องตัวและควบคุมชีวิตของคุณเม็ดฟูโบก็ช่วยบรรเทาอาการปวดสร้างกระดูกอ่อนข้อปกป้องกระดูกและข้อ
เนื่องจากผมใช้ผลิตภัณฑ์เม็ดฟูข้อเข่าเสื่อมโบคากระดูกและข้อของผมเนี่ยกลับมาดีขึ้นเลยครับผมชีวิตก็กลับมาดีขึ้นเช่นกันรู้สึกสดชื่นสุขภาพแข็งแรงกินได้นอนหลับครับโบคาเนี่ยสุดยอดจริงๆครับผมต้องขอบคุณโบคาครับที่ทำให้ผมเนี่ยกลับมาใช้ชีวิตได้ตามปกติอีกครั้งครับมีสินค้าดีๆแบบนี้ผมก็อยากจะแนะนำให้กับคนที่มีอาการแบบเดียวกับผมนะครับได้รู้จักกันมากๆครับผมเพราะว่าการเจ็บปวดจากโรคอาการแบบนี้เป็นระยะเวลานานๆเนี่ยมันจะส่งผลกระทบต่อชีวิตและจิตใจอย่างมากเลยครับหวังว่าเม็ดฟูข้อเข่าเสื่อมโบคาจะนำผลดีมาสู่คนที่มีอาการข้อเข่าเสื่อมเช่นผมนะครับเม็ดฟูข้อเข่าเสื่อมโบคาคือที่1
ถึง 3 เดือนแรกมันก็ค่อยๆดีขึ้นนะคะอาการปวดมันก็น้อยลงเข่ามันก็ไม่ดังก๊อบแก๊บก็เริ่มเดินดีขึ้นแม่เดินไม่โยกไม่เยกพอทานมาเรื่อยๆประมาณ 6-7 เดือนเนี่ยค่ะมันก็ค่อยๆหายไปความตึงก็ไม่มีค่ะก็เดินดีขึ้นแม่ขายของได้ทุกวันยืนตั้งแต่เช้าจนเย็นแม่ก็ยืนได้ไม่ปวดเข่าเลยค่ะ
เหมือนปาฏิหาริย์จริงๆเรื่องจริงเลยอันนี้ไม่ได้โกหกไม่ได้อะไรมาสอบถามคนแถวนี้ได้เลยนะเหมือนคนปกติอะค่ะขึ้นเขาได้ไหว้พระได้ขึ้นเขาผาซ่อนแก้ววัดพระธาตุผาซ่อนแก้วลูกตกใจขึ้นถึงสุดเลยขึ้นไปข้างบนสุดเลยไปถ่ายรูปไปอะไรต่ออะไรลูกยังบอกไม่น่าเชื่อเลยนะแม่ไม่น่าเชื่อว่าแม่จะดีขึ้นขนาดนี้ใครที่เป็นข้อเข่าเสื่อมนะคะทานเลยนะคะเพราะว่าขนาดดิฉันนะคะเป็นทั้งข้อเข่าเสื่อมแล้วก็รุมาตอยด์นะคะลองเลยค่ะไม่ต้องเสียดายตังค์นะคะคุ้มค่าที่สุดเลยค่ะสุขภาพเราดีที่สุดแล้วทานแล้วสุขภาพเราดีเนี่ยโอเค
เหลือเพียง50 ชุดเท่านั้นค่ะกับส่วนลด 50% สำหรับเม็ดฟูโบเคอร์รีบโทรมาที่หมายเลขโทรศัพท์ที่อยู่บนหน้าจอเลยค่ะเพื่อรับข้อเสนอซื้อ3แถม1ซื้อ4แถม2ซื้อ6แถม3
ตอนนี้มีเม็ดฟูโบคาผลิตภัณฑ์พิเศษที่ช่วยให้ผู้ป่วยหายปวดได้เร็วไม่กลับมาเป็นซ้ำและไม่ต้องผ่าตัดอีกด้วยสินค้าได้รับความไว้วางใจจากคนไทยหลายพันคน
เม็ดฟูโบก็เป็นส่วนผสมของสารออกฤทธิ์แฮปโปไซด์และเทคโนโลยีเอนไซม์ค้นคิดโดยนักวิทยาศาสตร์ซึ่งเป็นความหวังอันยิ่งใหญ่ของผู้ที่เป็นโรคข้อกระดูกเสื่อมการวิจัยที่ก้าวล้ำนี้ไม่เพียงแต่มีประสิทธิภาพสูงในการลดอาการปวดลดการอักเสบส่งเสริมการสร้างกระดูกและฟื้นฟูกระดูกอ่อนข้อเท่านั้นแต่ยังช่วยให้ผู้ป่วยคล่องแคล่วเคลื่อนอย่างรวดเร็วเมื่อเคลื่อนไหวและป้องกันการแข็งตัวได้อย่างมีประสิทธิภาพ
คู่นะครับเป็นเวลา1 สัปดาห์ผมรู้สึกว่า อาการมันดีขึ้นนะครับ รู้สึกตรงที่เจ็บมันเบาลงมาก ตอนนี้ข้อต่อของแขน ขาเคลื่อนไหวได้ตามปกติดีขึ้นกว่าเดิม กระดูกสันหลังก็เจ็บปวดน้อยลง เคลื่อนไหวดีไม่เหมือนเมื่อก่อนเลยครับ
ไปได้ 10-12 วันอาการปวดเนี่ยมันก็เริ่มหายเดินทางง่ายขึ้นที่สำคัญเราเนี่ยทำงานง่ายขึ้นแล้วก็เร็วขึ้น แล้วก็ไม่ต้องทนทรมาน
หลังจากที่ผมได้ลองใช้เม็ดฟูโบกาแค่5 วันเนี่ยอาการปวดหลังเนี่ยมันลดลงจริงๆครับกลางคืนเนี่ยนอนหลับสบายมากขึ้นไม่ต้องตื่นกลางดึกเหมือนแต่ก่อนแถมยังไม่มีอาการปวดหลังเลยทั้งนี้
ข่าวดีสำหรับผู้ป่วยเป็นโรคข้อเข่าเสื่อมเป็นครั้งแรกที่นักวิทยาศาสตร์เยอรมนีประสบความสำเร็จในการใช้ฮาปาโกไซด์สารออกฤทธิ์ที่พบในต้นโครงเล็บปีศาจเพื่อบรรเทาอาการปวดได้อย่างมีประสิทธิภาพหลังใช้เพียง 5-7 วันป้องกันการเสื่อมสภาพและช่วยให้กระดูกแข็งแรงประสิทธิภาพที่ได้รับการพิสูจน์จากทางสถาบัน RKI ประเทศเยอรมนีช่วยให้ผู้ป่วยลดอาการปวดเคลื่อนไหวได้ง่ายขึ้นและที่สำคัญไม่ต้องผ่าตัดค่ะ
เวลาไปไหนมาไหนเนี่ยจะรู้สึกว่าเราก้าวขาได้ไม่ค่อยดีนะคะไปพบคุณหมอค่ะคุณหมอก็ให้ยามารับประทานนะคะแต่ว่าไม่ดีขึ้นนะคะจนกระทั่งดิฉันได้มาพบดร.เดชานะคะดร.เดชาเนี่ยเป็นผู้ชำนาญเกี่ยวกับการรักษาข้อเข่านะคะแนะนำให้ดิฉันรู้จักโบคาค่ะเป็นเม็ดฟูที่ช่วยรักษาเกี่ยวกับอาการปวดข้อเข่าโดยเฉพาะค่ะดิฉันรับประทานมาแล้ว3 หลอดนะคะบอกได้เลยว่าดีมากค่ะอาการปวดข้อเข่าต่างๆเนี่ยหายไปนะคะเรียกว่าใช้ชีวิตประจำวันได้กลับมาเหมือนปกติเลยเวลาขึ้นลงบันไดเนี่ยสบายมากนะคะเวลาก้มเวลาเงยหรือว่ายืดตัวย่อตัวพวกนี้สบายมากเหมือนสมัยสาวๆเลยค่ะใช้แล้วเนี่ยดีมากเลยรู้สึกว่าอยากจะบอกต่อนะคะโบคานะคะเป็นเม็ดฟูที่ช่วยเสริมสร้างเนื้อเยื่อกระดูกอ่อนแล้วก็ฟื้นฟูเนื้อเยื่อข้อเข่านะคะใช้แล้วเนี่ยจะรู้ว่าเห็นผลค่ะเพราะว่าอาการปวดแป๊บเจ็บแป๊บเวลายืดเวลาเหยียดเวลาก้าวขึ้นลงบันไดพวกนี้ดีขึ้นมากเลยค่ะสำหรับคนที่มีปัญหานะคะอย่าเก็บไว้ค่ะอย่าทนทรมานนะคะแนะนำโบคาเลยค่ะเพราะว่าใช้แล้วดีจริงๆนะคะใช้แล้วเห็นผลค่ะขอบคุณมากค่ะ
ผู้ชมทุกคนคะในการสั่งซื้อเม็ดฟูโบกาของแท้โปรดติดต่อหมายเลขสายด่วนด้านบนหน้าจอเราพร้อมเสมอที่จะช่วยและซัพพอร์ตทุกคนนะคะ
หลังจากที่ทานเม็ดฟูได้10 กว่าวันนะคะตอนนี้ก็ไม่มีอาการปวดแล้วนะคะเข่าทั้ง2 ข้างอันนี้ก็แบบยืดได้สบายๆไม่มีรอยแดงบวมเลยนะคะได้รู้จักตัวเม็ดโบกาเร็วกว่านี้นะคะอาการก็คงจะไม่แย่ขนาดนี้นะคะแต่ว่าตอนนี้รู้จักแล้วก็รู้สึกดีๆรู้สึกดีมากเลยค่ะ
เมื่อก่อนผมรู้สึกผมชอบมันมากผมก็เลยซื้อมาตอนแรก3 หลอดเป็นเม็ดฟูละลายน้ำค่ะผมไม่คิดเลยว่าผลิตภัณฑ์โบกาธรรมดาขวดนี้จะออกฤทธิ์และให้ผลที่รวดเร็วมากผมทำไปประมาณ3 สัปดาห์ผมรู้สึกว่าอาการปวดเข่าปวดข้อเนี่ยมันค่อยๆหายไปต้องขอบคุณโบกามากครับที่ทำให้ผมและครอบครัวได้กลับมามีความสุข
โบคานี่ดีจริงๆเลยค่ะถูกใจมากๆเลยไปลองกันนะคะทุกคน
ดิฉันได้ทำตามคำแนะนำของคุณหมอดื่มวันละ2 เม็ดเช้าเย็นหลังอาหารนะคะไม่น่าเชื่อเลยนะคะผ่านไป3 เดือนแล้วเนี่ยอาการต่างๆนะคะที่เคยปวดข้อปวดเข่าอะไรต่างๆดีขึ้นมากเลยค่ะหายไปเลยไม่รู้สึกปวดเลยเดี๋ยวนี้เดินไปตลาดไปซื้อของเพื่อเอามาทำอาหารที่บ้านเองหรือเดินไปปากซอยสบายมากเลยค่ะไม่รู้สึกอาการปวดอะไรเลยเดินไกลๆได้ดีเลยเพราะว่าโบกาเม็ดฟูนี่เองค่ะ
เพียงแค่1 เม็ดใส่แก้วละลายน้ำและดื่มหลังอาหาร20 นาทีวันละ2 เม็ดจะช่วยขจัดอาการต่างๆเช่นปวดเข่าปวดหลังปวดกระดูกสันหลังชาที่แขนขาผู้ป่วยหลังจากใช้โบคาทุกคนพึงพอใจมากสามารถเดินขึ้นลงบันไดเดินไปตลาดหรือทำงานบ้านได้ตอนนี้ชีวิตของพวกเขาเปลี่ยนไปอย่างสิ้นเชิงหลังจากใช้ผลิตภัณฑ์เพียง 2-3 เดือนมีลูกค้ามากกว่า 500,000 คน เคยใช้และพึงพอใจมากกับเม็ดฟูโบคาคุณสามารถโทรติดต่อสายด่วนเพื่อทราบข้อมูลเพิ่มเติมเกี่ยวกับโปรโมชั่นเพื่อรับคำปรึกษาฟรีจากผู้เชี่ยวชาญ
กระดูกและข้อของเราก็เหมือนมอเตอร์ไซค์และรถยนต์นะคะ หากเราใช้ไป 10 ถึง 15 ปีโดยไม่รับการดูแลเอาใจใส่ มันก็จะพังและต้องทิ้งไปค่ะ แต่ถ้าเรามีวินัยต้องดูแลหลังจากใช้งานแต่ละครั้ง พวกเขาจะได้ทำความสะอาดบำรุงรักษาทาน้ำมันและจาระบีอย่างสม่ำเสมอมันจะอยู่กับเราได้หลายปีนะคะร่างกายของเราก็เหมือนรถยนต์คันนั้นวัยชราก็จะแก่เฒ่าและสึกหรอไปเองนะคะแต่ถ้าเรารักษาตัวเองให้คุณค่ากับสุขภาพตัวเองเราก็ซื้อผลิตภัณฑ์อย่างโบก้ามาดื่มนะคะดูแลมันแล้วมันก็จะเจ็บปวดน้อยลงค่ะมีชีวิตที่มีสุขภาพดีขึ้นเราก็จะรักชีวิตและหงุดหงิดน้อยลงค่ะเราก็ใช้ชีวิตด้วยพลังบวกไม่เป็นภาระลูกหลานในวัยชรา
Getting anything to a Mount Everest hotel, whether on bag or by yak, is a logistical nightmare. And if supplies do manage to arrive, they're expensive. One sack of rice costs $60, a gallon of gas, $113. These lodges, called tea houses, are some of the highest hotels in the world. But on Everest, accommodations for climbers look different from the more basic lodging used by porters, who work behind the scenes. So what's it like inside these tea houses? And how do you run a business at the top of the world? Up here, a single cup of milk tea costs nearly 10 times what it does in the valleys of Nepal. One of the main reasons is the amount of effort it takes to get supplies up the mountain. That responsibility falls to porters. Where guides work directly with climbers, porters get paid to carry supplies. At 18 years old, Shashant is one of the youngest porters in his trekking party. Today, there are around 20 kilometers between him and his destination, a tea house in Dingboche.
म भोग्नु त सक्छु 40-45 किलो ओभरै भोग्नु सक्छु अब मेरो खासमा भन्नुभन्दा पकेट खर्चको लागि गर्नुपर्छ अनि यसो तल तनाव भइरहेको बेला चाहिँ यता अलिक माइन्ड सेटल भए जस्तो हुन्छ महसुस हुन्छ
They carry supplies over 100 kilometers and up 5,300 meters of elevation to base camp. Under Nepalese law, trekking porters are supposed to carry no more than 30 kilos, but this is often ignored. And some commercial porters, paid by the load, carry more than their own body weight. Further along the path to the tea house, a helicopter lands to conduct a rescue operation. A stark reminder of how dangerous this job is. But the dangerous conditions haven't deterred the traffic. Even at these high elevations, climbers, guides, and yaks flow through the narrow trails. After 7 hours of hiking, Shashant finally arrives at a porterhouse. This is Dingboche, about 4,400 meters above sea level. Typically, porters aren't required to pay for lodging, only the food they eat.
मेरो साथी हुनुहुन्छ मेरो दाजु यता रक्सी खाँदै हुनुहुन्छ
Climbers and guides stay separate from porters at more spacious lodges. These lodges offer more amenities, but are often too expensive for porters. Shashant makes about $11 to $12 a day. He says he spends half and saves the rest. Shashant hopes to one day become a trekking guide and eventually a mountain guide. But for now, he's enjoying a comfortable place to sleep and a hot meal.
Try गर्छु है त पोर्टरलाई चाहिँ भट्टी पसलमा र गेस्टलाई चाहिँ होटलमा रेस्टुरेन्टमै राख्ने चलन चल्दै आएको त्यसैले म चाहिँ यही बस्छु ठिकै छ रमाइलो छ साथीहरूसँग भेट्न पाउँछौँ यस्तै भए पनि
Travelers rest at Vingboche for 2 days to acclimate to the high elevation. But Shashant can't relax for long. After a day of rest, it's time to pack up and get back on the trail. It's a snowy April day in Ferrochet. This is a popular stop for climbers descending from base camp, but this storm could last days and the visibility is low. A foreboding sign for anyone on their way down the mountain. But inside, Shiva Badur Basnet already has a fire going. He burns dried yak dung instead of wood because it's cheaper and widely available. During the busy season, 20 to 50 people cram in here each night.
अनि यता डमिटी अब सुत्ने ठाउँ यता छ अब सिरकहरू छन् अब छ्याङहरू पकाएको छ यसै गरी अब यतैबाट अब टोयलेट पनि यतै अब यहाँ निकालेर छ यहाँ टोयलेट यहाँ छ हो अनि भित्र जम्मा गर्ने एउटा ड्रम राखेको छ अब पानी तताउने घाम लाग्यो भने पानी तताउने अब यो सोलर यहाँ छ.
Shiva has run this tea house for 7 years. It's a frequent stop for porters returning from Everest Base Camp.
यसो सोलरहरू अब यहाँ बत्तीको सुविधा छैन अब प्यानल किनेर अब ब्याट्री किनेर अब यसो डिसोमहरू अब खोलेको छ टिभीहरू खोल्ने छ अब चार्ज गर्न उनीहरूलाई मोबाइल चार्ज गर्नदेखि सबै सुविधा फ्री दिएको छ यता 5-10 जना सुत्छन् त्यता 5-10 जना सुत्छन् माथिल्लोमा यता अब 8-10 जना सुत्छन् दिउँसो अलिकति बोर लाग्यो अब घाम ताप्ने ठाउँ यहाँ छ अब यस्तै गर्दै मैले अब पोटरहरूलाई भित्र आएपछि यस्तो ठाउँ रहेछ अब हामी बस्दा हुन्छ सुविधा रहेछ भनेर अब पोटरहरू बस्छन्.
Further up the mountain, there are limited accommodations for porters. If they don't have a place to stay, many hike down to Ferrochet after delivering the climber's luggage. Porters wake up early and hike about 2.5 kilometers back up to meet trekking guides before the expedition sets off. So at times, Shiva must have breakfast ready at 3 a.m. But tonight, the porters have a chance to rest, so Shiva is preparing a leisurely dinner for his guests. When flour costs $60 a sack, the options are limited, but Shiva makes the most out of what he has. On tonight's menu, noodles, stew, and dindo, a thick flour porridge that's a staple food in this part of Nepal.
ब्यास्टियमको बारीहरू यसो असर पसर गर्ने ब्यास्टियमको लागि नै हेरविचारमा आएको किनभने एकदम माथि बसेपछि चामल मात्रै धेरै मिठो हुँदैन अनि यता झरेपछि चाहिँ डिँडो खाने गाउँको जस्तो नै डिँडो खाने अनि जार खाने अब माथि हाईमा जार हुँदैन. हजुर हामीलाई अलिकति यो मिल्क टीहरू ब्ल्याक कफीहरू पनि एकदम राम्रो छ यहाँ.
Tea houses like this look different than the more modern accommodations available to climbers, some of whom are paying tens of thousands of dollars to summit Everest. Those lodges offer more space and better amenities, like separate rooms and showers. Depending on the location, climbers often pay less than $10 per night, up to about $60 if you include food and electricity.
टी सप चाहिँ यो अब टेकिङ टुरिज्ममा अब यो लजतिर अब कुल्लीलाई बास दिँदैन हैन अब बास नदिएको कारणले पनि अब उनीहरू खैरे मात्रै राख्छ अब गाइड मात्रै राख्छन् पोटरलाई ठाउँ हुँदैन त्यो कारणले पनि यस्ता टी सप खोजेर अब पोटरहरू बास खोजेर आउँछन् त्यो कारणले पनि अब हामीले यसरी खोलेर बस्छौं हामीलाई पनि 1-2 पैसा हुन्छ पोर्टरहरूलाई पनि सुविधा हुन्छ भनेर हामीले खोलेको हो
Lodges prioritise the foreign climbers, and while porters aren't explicitly banned, it's customary for them to stay elsewhere.
किराय लिइँदैन किराय हुँदैन त्यही खाकोमा हाम्रो टी शपमा चाहिँ खाको भरमा मात्रै हो केही सुतेको पैसा लिँदैनौँ हामी
But running a hotel at this altitude is hard work. Every drop of fuel, every piece of gear, and every morsel of food he needs to keep the place running must be carried up one step at a time. Consequently, Shiva's operating costs are astronomical.
अब ग्यासको भरमा अब मर्तेलको भरमा अब काम गर्नुपर्छ त्यसले गर्दाखेरि धेरै फाइदा हुँदैन यसो 2-4 पैसा महँगो एकदम महँगो पर्छ एक बोरा मैदालाई 8000 पर्छ एक बोरा चिनी 10000 पर्छ
And Shiva has to pass these prices on to his guests. The dindor Bajang is eating cost him 600 rupees, about double what it costs elsewhere in the country. But Shiva can't push prices too high. Despite the remote area, there is some competition. So Shiva works hard to ensure this is a comfortable place to stay. Additionally, local waste removal incentives provide Shiva with the opportunity to earn a little extra money.
यहाँ फोहोर सङ्कलन भएको सबै अब घरै पिछेको लगेर यहाँ हामीले कुनै अब ठाउँ बनाएको छ त्यो ठाउँमा लगेर अब सिसा छुट्टै क्यान छुट्टै हैन टिनहरू छुट्टै सिल्टीहरू छुट्टै अब त्यहाँ राखेर अब सिसा छुट्टै छ अनि फोहोर जलाउने जति एउटा खाल्टोमा छ त्यो अनुसार पनि त्यस्तै म अब दुःख गरेर यहाँ बच्चाहरुले त्यस्तो गरिरहेको छु मैले
Even with the high cost of doing business, running a tea house still provides Shiva with more than he's able to earn in his village. He works here for 6 months to support his family and to send his kids to school. During the off-season, he returns home to farm potatoes and maize.
मेरो उमेर चाहिँ अहिले 55 वर्ष भयो है 55 वर्षमा पनि यो दुःख गरेर छोराछोरीको लागि अब यसो आफ्नै लागि भए पनि हैन अब यसो गर्नु पर्यो नि त गाउँ घरमा 2-4 पैसा आम्दानी नभएको कारणले पनि यता खुम्बुमा बा अब के हुन्छ भनेर हामीले अब यसरी खोल्छौं अब दिनै अब यसो घर खर्च पुरै हुन्छ कि भनेर पाले कोही बेला घाटा लाग्छ कोही बेला अब 1-2 पैसा आउँछ छोराछोरीलाई खर्च हुन्छ
But beyond the financial pressures, Shiva's livelihood provides an essential service to porters travelling on the mountain.
यस्तै हो हामीले जहाँतिर राम्रो छ त्यहाँतिर जाने हो हामी गराफहरू पनि अब उनीहरूले जति राम्रो गर्यो हामी पनि त्यही नै गएर चाहिँ आरामले बस्ने खाने भन्ने कुरा त त्यही हो अब त्यस्तै हो हट हुँदैन यहाँतिर हट भन्ने ठाउँमा त हामी बस्दैन राम्रो भएपछि हामी चाहिँ खानालाई यही नै जाउँछौँ कि बुढी जस्तो हामीलाई त रोटी एकदम अडिलो हुने
अब उनीहरुलाई पोटर भनेर अब भारी बोक्ने भनेर हामीले हेलाओछ पनि गर्न मिल्दैन पोटरै भनेर भारी बोक्ने भनेर पनि मिल्दैन उनीहरु छन् हामी छौं त्यो कारणले पनि उनीहरु अब सुख सुविधा खोजेर आउँछन्
For Shiva, the hard work is worth it for the warmth and community the tea house provides. The atmosphere of the shared dormitory and small dining room is more like a home than a hotel. Despite the limited amenities, Shashant says he enjoys the camaraderie tea houses provide.
घर परिवारको त याद आइहाल्छ नि त किन नआउनु अब यो ट्रेक सकिने लगतै म चाहिँ म घर फर्किन्छु
After reaching base camp and more than a week of hiking, Shashant heads back down the trail towards the narrow airstrip at Lukla. From here, the climbers fly back to Kathmandu, ending their journey. But for many porters, the season is still going. They turn around, tie up their bags, and start the trek again.
Every wheel of Dutch cheese starts in a vat filled with millions of tiny curds.
But I'm just checking if the curd is a bit equally divided.
The Netherlands produces nearly 1 billion kilos of cheese a year. More than half of it is Gouda, or Gouda, as it's pronounced here. Frank Kaptein is a 7th-generation dairy farmer. While most cheese is made in big factories with pasteurized milk, he makes a rare kind of Gouda, using raw milk. But now, farmers fear their cheesy tradition could be at risk. The Netherlands could close hundreds of dairy farms to curb nitrogen emissions. In 2017, the tiny country emitted more per hectare than any other European nation. And about half of it comes from agriculture. Especially animals pee and poop.
Cows are not potty trained, so they poop everywhere.
These emissions threaten native forests and wildlife. But critics say the country's emissions cuts unfairly target livestock farmers.
En dan zie je dat er toch wel een gevoel van onmacht is op het erf, hè, aan de keukentafel van ja, wat kan ik doen?
So how did Dutch farmers get stuck in a decades-old climate policy? And what does this mean for the rest of the world? Frank's family has been making cheese in the town of Zoeterwoude for over 150 years. Every day, he starts by warming over 600 gallons of milk, pumped in from the milking barn.
Milk floating in now is like 37 degrees, just the body temperature of a cow.
For every batch of cheese, he adds rennet, enzymes that make the proteins in the milk clump together into solid curds, leaving behind the liquid whey.
Rennet is like a pair of scissors cutting through the milk.
After 30 minutes, a giant curd has formed.
It should break open like that. Looks good.
This machine starts cutting it into pieces.
And we cut it real small in order to have very little moisture in the cheese, in order to make a cheese which can age for years.
Frank's parents taught him how to make cheese when he was 22 years old.
My brother and I are the 7th generation Kaptein producing cheese and milking cows. And well, there will be at least 7 generations of cows walking on this farm as well.
He took over the family business with his brother in January of 2022.
I think 50% of the Dutch people has a great-grandfather who's been a farmer. Farmers shaped the landscape in the Netherlands.
In the 13th century, nearly a fifth of what is now the Netherlands was underwater. Over the centuries, the Dutch built dikes to hold back the sea. Farmers drained large portions of the reclaimed land to plant crops. But one of the only things that would grow on the wet soil was grass. So raising cattle for meat, milk, and cheese became big business. The dairy industry eventually became a symbol of the Netherlands, as much as tulips and windmills. Milk and cows graced Dutch masterpieces by Vermeer and Van Gogh. By the 20th century, the Netherlands was producing so much cheese, it was a valuable export. Today, almost all Dutch dairy farms sell their milk to big factories that pasteurize it and use machines to make cheese on a large scale. But Frank only works with raw milk. Just 4% of Dutch dairy farms make Gouda in-house like he does.
We still produce it on the way like my great-grandfather did. And I don't know if it's extra good, but I like it.
And what machines do at factories, he still prefers doing by hand, like checking the consistency of the curds himself.
No, it's just warm way. It's like almost 30 degrees. And the curd is real soft now. And now the curd over here is just like this deep under the whey, and over there there's no curd anymore. But I'm just checking if the curd is a bit equally divided, equally spread.
He can start draining out some of that liquid whey, but nothing goes to waste. He skims the fat to make butter and feeds the whey to his pigs.
The pigs are already happy with just whey. And I like butter on my sandwich in the morning.
He slices the leftover curd into sections large enough for a wheel of cheese. He gauges the right amount by feel. Meanwhile, Frank's employee Savannah prepares the old buckets, most of which were Frank's grandfather's.
There are only a handful of farmers in the Netherlands who still use wooden buckets.
Frank drifts a cloth below the surface and piles the curds on top. The cloth will help the last bit of whey drain out. They repeat the process for 12 wheels of cheese.
There's a lot of whey in, so I think about 25-30 kilograms, something like that. And it's cozy.
These presses squeeze out the remaining liquid. All this cheese comes from the milk of Frank's 200 female cows. The Netherlands has nearly 1.6 million of them, and they produce lots of nitrogen because of what they eat: fertilizer-grown grass in the summer and imported grain and soy year-round. Their pee is full of nitrogen too, and when it mixes with their poop, it creates a gas called ammonia. The plumes of ammonia drop down onto nature reserves and acidify the soil. Some nitrogen-loving plants like grass take over, while other native plants can't absorb proper nutrients. From there, it's a domino effect. Many native plants grow weak or die out. Snails can't get enough nutrients to build their shells. The birds that eat the snails can't develop eggs, or their chicks are born with frail bones. Inside one of the Netherlands' largest national parks, rangers like Annemieke Visser-Wintering say oak and pine trees are dying out.
They're all sick. There's not one that I would say, oh, you know, that's very, very fit or very a healthy tree. You can say that the trees are starving. It's not getting all the nutrients that it needs to be a very healthy, full-grown oak tree that it can be.
Environmentalists say 14 habitats in the country are on the brink of collapse.
The dairy sector is one of the drivers of biodiversity loss in the Netherlands.
Back in 1992, what is now the European Union adopted a law known as the Habitats Directive, requiring countries to designate nature areas for conservation. In order to comply, the Netherlands introduced policies to cut nitrogen on these protected lands. Back then, Dutch farms had one of the highest ammonia emission rates in Europe. By 2019, the industry had cut its emissions by almost 2/3. Covered manure storage, like below this slatted floor, has helped. If it stays sealed underground for enough time, the ammonia won't evaporate as much.
Everywhere we are standing, there's 2 meters deep basement full of manure and pee.
But these efforts alone weren't enough. The farms releasing the most ammonia sat near those protected nature reserves. The nation's highest court said the Netherlands needed to do more. The government scrambled to comply. Some lawmakers suggested cutting the number of animals in the country in half. Farmers were outraged. They protested for weeks, dumping manure on streets and blocking roads with tractors.
Het is voor ons bestaansrecht. Dus ja, ik hoop dat voor te zetten, maar dan moeten de regels wel mee gaan werken, anders zal dat niet mogelijk zijn.
By early 2023, the government lowered the goal to a 50% cut. But by then, a pro-farmer political party named the Farmer Citizen Movement had swept provincial elections. Rick Lueders is a party leader in this area.
We have a nitrogen law which is rigid and is fully focused on dairy farming, and we want that this law is gone.
Soon after, the government announced a $1.6 billion plan to buy out and close up to 3,000 high-emitting farms near nature reserves. a farmer can voluntarily take the buyout and possibly get more than their farm is worth. But for Frank, selling his 7-generation farm isn't an option. He says his cows are like family.
This is Gina. She's the highest ranking. She's the leader of the herd. She just bosses other cows away with her head, mainly. So when she wants to drink and there's another cow, boink, move aside. I'm Gina, here I am, and I want to drink.
He even got married on this farm, surrounded by his cows. And it's tradition in his family to name cows after relatives.
And I named the cow after my daughter as well.
Frank and his brother milk the cows twice a day.
First we clean the teeth, starting at left front, right rear, and left rear. And then we connect the milking claw. There's a little bit of vacuum underneath, so it sucks the milk away.
Frank gets about 8 gallons of milk a day from each cow. What he can milk in 15 minutes would have taken his grandfather an entire day. New technology helped dairy and livestock farms consolidate, beginning in the mid-20th century.
Little farmers, cheesemakers, they quit. And the bigger ones, they grow bigger.
To this day, between 70 and 80% of the country's dairy is sent abroad, mainly to other European countries.
That's all in the region of between, let's say, London, Paris and Berlin, within an area of 800 kilometers. In the USA, you would call that a local product.
The Netherlands is also the EU's largest exporter of meat. It trades about $9 billion worth of pork, beef, and poultry internationally every year, and it does it all on land not much bigger than the US state of Maryland. For much of the world, the Netherlands became a roadmap for how to farm efficiently at scale. But environmentalists like Natasha Orlemans from the World Wildlife Fund see it differently.
I see the Netherlands as an example of where everything went wrong. Exporting the meat and dairy and having a huge amount of manure here in the Netherlands, causing all these environmental and societal problems.
The farmers we spoke to said saving the environment should go hand in hand with preserving their centuries-old traditions. Traditions like flipping the cheese.
In the first 24 hours of the cheese, we turn it like 6 times.
Flipping ensures both sides of the wheel will be round, like the curve of the bucket.
See it already turning yellow. So it's a good sign.
Then he moves the cheese wheels into a salty brine.
The salt bath is mainly for making a crust around the cheese. A little bit of salt will get deeper into the cheese for a little bit of taste.
Frank ages his specialty gouda for up to 10 years at a consistent 59 degrees Fahrenheit.
This is one is from 2013, so 10 years old now. And still looking shiny, still looking young.
Here he stores hundreds of wheels, over $100,000 worth of cheese.
Every day we turn them, put an extra layer of coating on top of it.
That liquid plastic coating seals in the moisture.
And of course to keep mold away. You hear it when I lift it, it gets stuck on the shell. So that's why you flip it as well.
As it ages, friendly bacteria build up amino acids, these crystals.
It's where the flavor of the cheese comes from.
Frank can tell it's aging well from the sound.
It's nice flat here. You hear it?
Frank is one of over 45,000 people working in the Dutch dairy industry.
If you just take out half of the farmers and half of the jobs and half of the income, where do these people going to work? They go to the cities probably, and the whole villages at the countryside will become ghost cities, I think.
Within 10 or 15 years, I'm worried, who's going to produce our food? And where is it coming from?
Many farmers now face a tough decision. Take the buyout, decrease their herds, move their farms, or make pricey upgrades to try to cut nitrogen emissions. But not everyone can afford costly innovations. Many farmers are working on narrow margins or are already in debt.
Farmers don't get a loan from the bank because they say, oh, we don't know if you can still farm after this due to these regulations.
Plus, farmers don't even know yet if innovations could actually save their farm from closure. Researchers at Wageningen University are hoping they can.
This is not a commercial dairy farm. It's a research center.
That's Kees de Koning. He runs the university's dairy campus. His team is testing different iterations of the slatted floor Frank has.
We can run trials where we separate the urine and the solids.
They're also studying the effect of robotic scrapers and poop vacuums. By quickly moving waste into closed storage, vacuums reduce methane and ammonia loss. But Kees estimates one like this could cost over $20,000, and a farm of 120 cows would need 2. Kees says changing cows' diets is a cheaper option.
So, can we feed cows in such a way that we have less ammonia emission or less nitrogen losses?
His team feeds the cows different combinations of food. Then they use these troughs to test how much the animals eat and their emissions.
The electronic ID system is identified, so we know exactly which cow is in the box.
So if innovations can't help, farmers still have the option of the buyout. As of November 2023, nearly 1,000 livestock farms had registered for it. Almost a quarter were dairy farms. But the government won't pay them out for a while.
It will take at least another 6 months to a year before that is finalized.
That same month, a new right-wing party, PVV, won the most seats in the country's parliamentary elections. Geert Wilders, the party's leader, spoke at farmer protests earlier in the year.
They are killing our farmers for some idiotic leftist liberal so-called nitrogen problem in the Netherlands.
The party has signaled it wants to stop government spending on initiatives to curb nitrogen, including the fund for the buyout plan. Rick hopes the PVV will form a coalition with other pro-farmer parties.
We can make new laws. It's quite simple.
But a coalition could take months. The World Wildlife Fund says this delay will only lead to further deterioration of nature. Meanwhile, farmers are in limbo.
It's the limbo that paralyzes the agricultural sector. And that limbo is very dangerous for nature as well, because it's still suffering. It's horrible, and I can feel for them.
This problem isn't unique to the Netherlands. Dairy farmers in Ireland might have to decrease the size of their herds because of unsafe nitrogen levels in rivers, which are causing algae blooms. New Zealand has some of the most polluted waterways in the world. Dairy farming is one of the biggest sources of these dangerous nitrate levels in drinking water. And in the U.S. state of California, agriculture has contributed to hazardous air pollution. All of these countries will have to contend with the same questions the Netherlands faces today. How do we feed ourselves, preserve tradition, keep economies running, and protect our planet?
I don't see myself as being opposing to farmers. I'm opposed to the system the way it is now. It's ecologically a disaster, and it's also not bringing farmers a proper income. So basically, it's a system that's being broken, and that system needs to be fixed.
Frank seems open to a fix too.
If it helps nature or climate, bring it on.
Maybe then his family can continue making cheese for another 7 generations.
I hope that dairy farmers have a future in the Netherlands. I think we're really connected to the landscape. I hope farms won't grow too big, so it can be run on a family scale. I think that's a beautiful way of living.
shrimp is the most consumed seafood in the United States. And in Louisiana, it's big business. The wild-caught crustaceans bring in about $1.3 billion for the state every year. But for the last few years, shrimpers have been hit with a perfect storm of rising fuel costs and rock-bottom prices.
That's one of the toughest jobs you could ever do. And if you're not getting your dues for it, why do it?
Producers say a flood of cheaper imported shrimp from India and Ecuador is sinking Louisiana's industry. But there's no way to feed America's skyrocketing demand without imports, which make up 90% of the shrimp the U.S. consumes. Up against these headwinds, companies up and down Louisiana's supply chain are closing up shop.
If you worked hard and you did the right thing, you could become a millionaire in the 80s and the 90s. Now you could barely make a living.
So how did the industry get this bad? And is it too late to save it? New Orleans chef Justin Kennedy insists on buying only wild shrimp caught by fishermen in the Gulf of Mexico.
We have never fried a foreign shrimp and ever served it to our customer. I'll never even look at it as an option.
He runs Parkway Bakery and Tavern, a New Orleans fixture since 1911, famous for these massive po' boys.
It's just one of those perfect little things that bring all walks of life together, and damn if it's a sandwich, you know?
He can go through 3,000 pounds of shrimp a week.
So what this is a sink that we just have chilled water piped to, and it's just a quick thawing out our seafood. And if you look at them, they're peeled. We take that vein out because it's a cleaner shrimp. It butterflies it a little bit more to kind of hold the batter and just make it a better bite. I'm gonna scoop a heaping pile of it up. So we're gonna dust this up.
He coats them in only corn flour.
We just use the natural juices and moisture from the shrimp to pick up that flour. You lightly shake that off. 350 degrees, that's pure vegetable oil. This one right here is getting that golden brown color, right? Looking like little baby fried chicken. Watch this, you break that open. Look at that. Look at that little coating. Look at that Louisiana white meat in there. You know, you can't get no better than that.
That shrimp will eventually meet one of these giant loaves.
I think I'm almost 2 breads tall. Let's see. The French people kind of laugh at it because we call it French bread, but it's New Orleans French bread. This ain't French bread.
Justin hits the bread with some mayo, lettuce, and tomato.
And then we start dealing the shrimp.
2 handfuls?
Oh no, we put more than that. Yeah, I mean
4 handfuls?
It's a big sandwich, but you'll notice when you see this thing laid out in front of you, you'll be like, how am I going to eat all that? And then all of a sudden it's gone. So we do one fold, tuck these in, wrap it. We're gonna put one more on there. There you go. Parkway Bakery Shrimp Po' Boy.
Where's that go now?
In my belly, baby.
About 1,000 people line up every day for these sandwiches, and Justin credits Local Shrimp for his award-winning recipe.
You know, I've had people try to sample me foreign. The batter won't stick on it. It's translucent when you cook it. You never see this pretty white meat. It still looks clear. It still looks like this when you cook it. But this Louisiana shrimp's true and true every time. Can't beat it.
Justin gets most of his shrimp from this factory, right up the road. Kristen Baumer is one of the few processors left in the area who only works with Gulf shrimp, just like his family has for over 130 years.
We've definitely seen a lot of processors go out of business. It's become more of a volume game because the margins are so tight.
His company processes 30 million pounds of shrimp annually.
So what we're doing is easy peeling shrimp. We're hand feeding it into a machine that splits the back of the shell, cuts the shell open, and then it allows, when you cook it, more flavor to get into the shrimp as well as making it easier to peel.
Kristen's team flash freezes all the crustaceans in this room. That's how they're able to transport the shrimp all over the country.
So they're picking shrimp for the second time to make sure they get all the defects out of it before it goes up.
This shaker separates the pieces so they won't stick together when they're frozen. Then they take a trip down this tunnel at minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit.
And after the shrimp hits the liquid nitrogen, it forms a crust on the shrimp, and then it moves slowly through the belt to freeze from the outside in. Don't stick your finger in unless you have a warrant that you want to burn up.
This machine portions the seafood into 5-pound bags of about 15 pieces. Each bag gets a traceability barcode.
Link it all the way back to the shrimp dock that it came from.
This processed product comes out to anywhere from $7 to $10 a pound, depending on the season.
With inflation, everything is getting more and more expensive, and running these processing plants and all this moving equipment and avoiding breakdowns takes a lot of capital.
People have been fishing and processing this shrimp in Louisiana for centuries, from Cajun fishermen to the indigenous people of the United Homa Nation. In the 1800s, shrimp was a staple food of the poor, and sellers couldn't transport it far because shrimp spoiled so easily in the Louisiana heat. That was until the mid-1800s, when several advancements brought shrimp beyond the local scene. Chinese immigrants introduced traditional drying techniques that could preserve the shrimp, and the first canning factory in New Orleans opened up in 1875. But fresh shrimp transported on ice was expensive, so it took on a reputation as a luxury item, tossed into shrimp salads and perched in cocktails. By the 1950s, techniques to freeze shrimp and new refrigerated trucks sealed the deal. They allowed for seafood delivery as far away as the East Coast and Chicago. This was about the time that the shrimp imports into the U.S. from Mexico and then India began to take off. By 1970, demand across the U.S. had nearly tripled, and domestic shrimpers caught more to keep up, with Louisiana leading the pack. By the 90s, the state's shrimp and shellfish generated nearly $2 billion and supported 22,000 jobs. And come the turn of the century, shrimp became the most consumed seafood in America. At the same time, new tech helped farms in Asia and South America raise a lot more shrimp. In less than a decade, farming production skyrocketed nearly 200%, overtaking global catches of wild shrimp. In 2023, the U.S. imported 1.7 billion pounds, nearly as much as its population consumes. And these imports are often cheaper than wild-caught U.S. shrimp. That's because labor costs are lower in big shrimp farming countries like India and Ecuador, and their governments have subsidized these operations. In the U.S., domestic shrimp prices have dropped to compete with the low import prices. Meanwhile, shrimpers like Captain Lonnie Mayu Jr. are facing skyrocketing costs of operating a boat.
You're wasting fuel and ice if you don't catch anything.
Since the 1980s, he says a block of ice has gone from $14 to $26 today. A set of new nets more than doubled, and a gallon of gas more than tripled in price. At 82 years old, Lonnie, who goes by Knuckles, hasn't given up trawling these waters, even after 6 decades. Starting in May, he heads out to catch brown shrimp, usually around sunset.
You have to go do your homework and know where they're going to be at.
He works independently, like most of the shrimpers here.
Right about there. A little too far.
During the day, brown shrimp may bury themselves in the sediment to hide from predators. But after dark, they often come out and roam in shallow water. Knuckles and his deckhand Steve drop these nets that skim the top of the water.
We're not dragging anything on the bottom.
He positions himself against the current, so the shrimp fall right into his nets.
The shrimp are not like fish. They can't really swim that great. They take a ride on the current.
Knuckles and Steve will pick out and keep just the shrimp. Sea turtles have an escape hatch in the net, and other animals get thrown back into the sea, where some dolphins are waiting to chow down on them.
If we don't pick up in that favor often enough, they'll take and bite it out the net.
They can literally rip a 4-foot hole in it, which is going to take a lot of time to fix.
Like this one. Knuckles pulls up the net so he can sew it closed.
You're going to lose everything, you know? You're going to be working for literally nothing.
this work can be grueling. Some shrimpers have big enough vessels they can stay out for weeks at a time. Knuckles has a smaller boat, so he fishes just until morning.
But it keeps you in shape.
But even after all this work, there's a chance they could have a bad run. Tonight, most of the nets were full of catfish.
Ooh, catfish. See it, belly? They're full of shrimp. Full of shrimp. They went in the net, ate all the shrimp. We ain't got a pound of shrimp. It's all catfish. I'm gonna try pushing up, going a little further up in the lake or something.
Knuckles spent $45,000 buying and fixing up his boat. It was meant to be his ticket to retirement. But now he's unsure that plan will work.
You know, for me to get out the business, I gotta sell it. I got no retirement, but I can't sell a boat. Can't give it away. Nobody wants it.
And most shrimpers agree it's getting harder to justify going out.
For this boat to leave the dock, it's gonna cost me over $1,000. It's killing us. The farmers is killing us.
Right now, nobody want to do it no more because they're struggling.
Milena Cheeve has been fishing for 8 years. Like 60% of the state's shrimp boat owners, she and her husband are originally from Southeast Asia.
With our education, there's nothing else we could do besides fishermen, especially like me and my husband, like in our mid-50s.
Milena and her husband weren't able to go to college, but they hoped shrimping would help their kids do the opposite.
Not enough to pay, especially when you have 2 kids in college. You're struggling.
Dock owners are feeling the impact too.
Because if we don't bring no shrimp, they don't make no money either. You know, when the shrimp boats go out, they're gonna kill the docks too. That's a pretty shrimp.
Dean Blanchard's family has been buying and selling local shrimp for 5 generations.
I was born in a shrimp dock. When I was a baby, they used to put me in a shrimp box.
His dock, 2 hours south of New Orleans, was once one of the biggest shrimp suppliers in the country. But last year, he paid the lowest prices he ever has for the larger shrimp.
30-some years ago, they went down from $5 to $1.30.
That's because he's selling it for so little to the peeling factories.
Right now, it's the cheapest I ever seen in my life. I'm sick to my stomach. I ain't never seen nothing like this. Never in my life seen it this bad.
After 6 decades in the industry, Dean's no stranger to financial challenges. From the 2010 BP oil spill to big storms. His dock had $2 million in damages after Hurricane Ida hit in 2021.
Where you're standing right there wasn't even there after the storm. I mean, I've rebuilt this building at least 8-9 times.
He never fixed up this part of his marina.
Oh, it brings tears to your eyes. I mean, everything you work for all your life is gone.
But imports, he says, have done even more damage.
We're directly correlated with imports. If a completely processed product is coming in for just over $4 a pound, that means our dockside prices have to be lower, the processors' prices are lower, so to be able to try to get that market share and keep it. So you're making the same amount of money that you would in 2000, but 22 years later.
Fewer boats can afford to go out, so less shrimp is landing on Dean's dock.
We're down to right under 20% of what we normally are for this time of the year.
On this day we visited in May 2023, not a single shrimp boat pulled up to unload.
It ain't gonna last too much longer like this. Thank God I'm almost 65 years old and I ain't got no kids in this business.
Dean estimates that 96% of the docks operating when he started out have since closed down.
I feel bad for the people because I know once I'm gone, they're gonna have to drive 50, 60, 70 miles to go sell their product.
Just like Knuckles, when Dean retires, he doesn't think anyone will buy the company.
Nobody can afford to take it over. The property is worth more than the business.
Louisiana still hauls in the most shrimp of any U.S. state, over 70 million pounds in 2023. But that's a small fraction, the roughly 2 billion pounds the US consumes.
The American landings of shrimp cannot cover the overall consumption of shrimp.
Nearly 90% of the shrimp Americans eat is imported, and much of it is sourced using controversial practices. In 2021, an International Trade Commission analysis indicated that shrimp might be the US seafood market most affected by illegal fishing. Like this boat, off the coast of Gambia. It had an illegal undersized net, and although the shrimp was labeled sustainable, 99.9% of the seafood on board were other species, like sharks and octopuses.
And a lot of time, that bycatch dies on the deck and just gets thrown back into the ocean.
But the majority of the shrimp the US imports is farm-raised.
A lot of our shrimp comes from India, where there are huge environmental concerns as well as ongoing allegations of human rights abuses and forced labor.
A 2024 Associated Press report found women in the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh were peeling frozen shrimp without protective gear, which can lead to frostbite.
It's kept incredibly cold to keep bacteria from proliferating. I don't know about you, but I don't want to hold ice cubes in my hand all day while I'm also trying to do very nimble work with my fingers. One of the huge issues is that these shrimp farms are isolated. They're far out on the coast. You know, there's not OSHA, there's no one protecting and making sure that the conditions are safe.
But they have few other options for work.
A lot of times when these aquaculture facilities are built, other economic resources in these areas disappear.
Arugula Baby is still trying to pay off an $8,500 loan she took out when her son was dying of liver disease. Since he passed, she's been raising her grandchildren alone. To get to the peeling shed, she has to pay for transportation and 25 cents to a recruiter. She earns below $4 every day, $2 under the country's minimum wage.
A lot of times we will see a woman being threatened for her own safety or her family's safety unless she works, unless she meets certain quotas.
Beyond the human cost, there's also an environmental one. In India, most of the farms are along coastlines, where water is plentiful and mangrove forests thrive.
Those mangroves go through deforestation. They're pulled out. They're blown up with dynamite. So we lose that nursery habitat for other sea creatures, and we lose our coastline protection.
When that happens, shrimp can have 10 times the carbon footprint of beef.
Next, these really big ponds are dug into the land. So the shrimp live in these ponds.
Chemicals and excrement from shrimp pens can leach out into surrounding environments. They can cause algae blooms and dead zones, disrupt ecosystems, and contaminate water. Shrimp farms around the world have been criticized for using antibiotics to treat illness in their ponds.
If you've ever ridden the subway home at rush hour, you know how it is. You're in tight, you're squeezed in tight. There's great opportunities for sickness to spread. And it's that exact same situation in these ponds, which is why antibiotic use is so incredibly high.
That overexposure can lead to antimicrobial resistant superbugs, a health concern that's estimated to have caused nearly 1.3 million deaths around the world in 2019. And some antibiotics, like nitrofurans, have been linked to liver damage and cancer. In the US and European Union, almost all of these kinds of drugs are banned.
So you could end up eating something that's illegal here.
In 2023, the US Food and Drug Administration turned away 51 shipments of shrimp because of banned antibiotics. But the organization checks just about 2% of imports.
So what happens with that other 96 to 98% of seafood that's coming in?
The major health concern here is the lack of testing of imported shrimp, the amount of banned substances that may be carried in these shrimp.
A 2017 LSU study found that 30 out of 42 samples tested from stores around Baton Rouge had antibiotics or antimicrobials.
And that's largely due to the fact that the FDA is responsible for more than 50 million imports annually. And there's just not enough work power to inspect everything coming in.
In the last year, the U.S. Department of Commerce has imposed duties on shrimp from India, Vietnam, and Ecuador. But these efforts, Louisianan shrimpers tell us, haven't been enough to help their incomes. Imported shrimp is still flooding the market. That's why locals like Kristen have been advocating for more regulation. He's a part of the Louisiana Shrimp Task Force, which works with the state government on long-term solutions.
We need country of origin labeling on restaurant menus, so at least when people buy, they're buying and making a choice.
In 2019, the Louisiana legislature passed a law requiring restaurants to disclose if their shrimp is imported. But some restaurants still passed off imported as domestic. The state's health department has handed down 2,600 violations since the law went into effect, but no restaurants were ever fined. In May 2024, the governor signed a bill for heavier fines on restaurants that mislabel seafood. If they're busted, they could be fined up to $2,000. While Justin says he'll never touch imported shrimp, he can understand why restaurants turn to it when the local stuff gets expensive.
They're looking for a good product that will get the register to ring, and so you can't blame them either.
With dock prices so low, he paid $4 a pound in 2023, almost half of what he was paying 2 years ago.
I understand that. When I get a cheap price, I know the shrimpers out there in the boats are probably getting hammered. But if it went back to $7 a pound, I'd still buy it. I just have to go up on my price.
A price he says he's lucky his customers would probably pay.
You're talking to one of the busiest po' boy shops in the city. What about the corner stores who are just living from day to day? There has to be some kind of medium. I just hope it'll work itself out. This has been little, small holes pecking away for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you know? And it's coming where, it's starting to take water. We're going down, you know, in the seafood industry.
The fact is, the U.S. eats so much shrimp that the stuff caught in the Gulf could never cover it all. So farm crustaceans will probably always fill that gap.
Got to import, because we can't supply the whole United States. But put a quota on it.
It has to come down from Washington. There has to be some work done up there with like regulating the import.
Dean wants federal assistance for shrimpers.
Yeah, there wouldn't be a farmer left in business if they had to live like we live. They're being subsidized for this. Shrimpers should be considered farmers of the sea, but we're not.
More inspections of seafood at U.S. ports and better traceability of shrimp from boat to plate would also help. But some experts say it comes down to better consumer awareness of the health benefits of wild-caught shrimp over farmed, like how the salmon industry got people to pay more for wild-caught thanks to messaging that it was more nutrient-dense.
If people would know exactly what they're buying and they know exactly what they're feeding their kids, they wouldn't mind paying a couple of cents more for a product that don't have antibiotics.
In the grocery store aisle, don't be fooled by tricky labeling, like product of USA or prepared in the USA. That could be referring to where the shrimp was last processed, not necessarily where it was caught. Flip to the back of the package and look for the phrase farm-raised or wild-caught in, followed by a country name. That should tell you where it's from.
Purchase U.S. farmed or U.S. wild-caught shrimp. In the U.S., farm shrimp are held to very strict regulations in regards to what antibiotics they can use and how much.
And when you're at a restaurant,
I always ask, where is that shrimp from? And if that restaurant can't answer that, then I don't order it. Or maybe we should just eat a little less shrimp and take it back to being a special occasion item.
Backed by consumer awareness, maybe then shrimpers can save their sinking ship.
We have to have it, and we will always have it. Parkway Bakery will always have Louisiana shrimp. I'll get on a boat my damn self, you know? This is my father-in-law and my wife right here. And we met back 6-7 years ago in a po' boy competition. And that's how we met. I won by a hair. You know, I won in the short run. She definitely won in the long run.
You're not allowed to bring it up, though.
No, I'm not allowed to bring it up.